So the NBA season for the Warriors is among us, and many people are wondering just how the Warriors will stack up against this loaded Western Conference. There are so many good teams in the West this year that it could be hard to find where the Warriors can fit in. They have a ton of issues that remain unresolved, but at the same time, they have a ton of great assets that could swing the odds depending on how this Western Conference plays out. The real question is, what is more likely to happen? Their weaknesses bothering their team, or their strengths being able to overshadow everything and bring them to the promised land? That's what we're trying to figure out here. In order to do that, let's identify both sides of the coin. Let's start with the weaknesses. Number 1, the obvious, the health of the core. Let's not kid ourselves here. If the OGs go down, it's done. The team just doesn't have an identity outside of the vets. They don't know how to exist without them. They're likely not going to do their job without being told what to do. The young players just don't have enough firepower or juice to compete with the best in the West. No one is capable of leading this team in any way. Even if the vets are pretty much healthy for the full season, they're still likely going to miss games. So it begs the question, can the team win without the vets? I doubt it. 2. Despite having better size at the center position, the Warriors are still too small. They're small collectively, particularly from the wing position. What that naturally leads to is a decrease in athleticism. That's the issue here. They have 2 centers and a bunch of guards. There's an imbalance of size and athleticism on this team, so you're likely going to see a ton of 3-guard lineups out there. This will heavily affect the game on both ends. Defensively, if we run into bigger teams, they can push us around and shoot over the top. We're vulnerable to powerhouses or big guards that can play in space. The lack of athleticism leads to a lack of POA defense. The Warriors are toast at the point of attack this season, period. They just don't have competent POA defenders. On top of that, the defensive rebounding will take a hit. That will hurt the defense. Offensively, it'll likely reduce the shot attempts at the rim. None of the guards on this team are great finishers. This was an issue last season, and the only way to fix it is if they package up some of their guard rotation for more wings by the trade deadline. 3. The Warriors have a ton of shooting talent. We'll get to that later. But what they don't have a lot of is ball handling talent. They don't have someone who they can rely on to beat ball pressure and play pick and roll. They have a lot of movement shooters. They don't have guys good enough to put it on the deck and create off a ball screen. Outside of Steph, who's the next best ball handler? I've asked this question before, I'll ask it again. Right now, it's probably Pat Spencer, which is embarrassing. Ideally, it should be Pods. Pods is the best player for this type of role, but he still has issues being assertive in his game. If he addresses it, then we'll have a different convo. But as of right now, they don't have enough ball handling, and a lack of ball handling naturally leads to a lack of perimeter scoring. The Warriors can't play Warriors basketball if they don't have enough perimeter scoring. They got Steph, but outside of him, who else can even replicate a fraction of what he can do? Last year in the playoffs, their movement shooters were easy to guard if you have size and athleticism. They didn't have anyone who can score in space on the ball. As a result, the offense stagnates and it affects the defense. You have Jimmy Butler trying to create in space, but he plays way too slow. Alright, so now let's get on to the strengths. 1. The Warriors became the best defense by stats after the Jimmy Butler trade, not because they were a great defensive team in terms of talent. It was largely due to the fact that they were anchored by elite defenders. Draymond had a fantastic ending to last season as a DPOY candidate. Jimmy Butler was great as a help side defender, despite playing one position up. He played the 4 when he's really a 3. But the Warriors don't have any POA defenders. They just had a duo that was very good defensively. Add Al Horford to that equation, and now you have at minimum a top 3 defensive front line. I've already addressed the versatility that can come with this combo in the Horford vid, but I believe in this front line. I think they can cover a lot of weaker defenders on this team despite their old age. 2. Is this the best Warriors team in terms of spacing? How many shooters does this team have? You got Steph, Pods, Moody, Buddy, Horford, Post, Melton, Seth Curry, and maybe even Will Richard. You got like 7 or 8 guards on this team who can shoot. And you got 2 stretch 5s. Occasionally, Draymond can give you a couple of them. Maybe Jimmy as well. JK is not a great shooter, but I believe in his jumper this season. The form looks good, the confidence is there. Hopefully he can take that next step as a shooter. The point is, the Warriors rotation contains a lot of shooters. So naturally speaking, the Warriors should become a better jump shooting team this season. At least top 5, minimum. Last season, they were top 3 in 3-point frequency, but they were middle of the pack in efficiency. And that's with Steph. Can you imagine if they didn't have Steph? They'd be dead last. So this year, they should be one of the best jump shooting teams in the league. If not, then I don't know what to say. The only concern I have is generating good looks. You can have a ton of shooters on your team, but if you can't get them good looks, then it could be a problem. Of course, the system is going to do that for them, but again, you still need athletes that can get downhill in order to make the defense collapse so they can kick the ball and be able to shoot good threes. But as you know, there's not a whole lot of athletes outside of JK on this team. 3. There are plenty of vets who can mentor some of the young guys and get ahead of the game. The Horford addition is going to be great for some of the young centers on our team like QP and TJD. Obviously, Draymond's been doing it for years. It seems like it's been him all this time. But now, having Jimmy for a whole season, he can get in JK's ear. There was a moment during preseason where Jimmy was talking to JK about getting him the ball. Steph has also been inserting himself into that leading role the last few years as well. This type of stuff can be valuable for some of the young guys and potentially accelerate their development. But with the amount of experience and mileage that Steph, Jimmy, Dre, and Horford have had in this game, they can work together and sniff out the game. When you play for that long, you're going to recognize patterns that can help you get ahead of plays despite the diminution in athleticism. Draymond has made a living doing this defensively, and if you add 3 smart players along with that, you're likely going to get great stuff defensively. 4. The Warriors low-key have the same problem that they did last year. Do y'all remember how last year we had too many players that could crack the rotation? And it made Steve Kerr decide to want to play a 12-man rotation? Do y'all remember that? You could honestly say the same this season. You got Steph, Pods, Jimmy, Draymond, Horford, JK, Moody, Buddy, Melton, Post, Seth Curry, GP2, and TJD. What is that, like 13 dudes? And that's not even mentioning Guy Santos or even Will Richard. So they got a deep rotation. They got dudes who can play real minutes for sure. Should they? That's a different convo. But the point is, they do have a lot of rotational players. You already know Steve Kerr, despite having some good offseason acquisitions, he's likely going to mix and match the rotation again this year. Which can be good because if one player gets injured, another one can fill in just like that. Or you can adjust by playing certain guys against certain matchups. It's great to have role player depth, but the issue here is that they don't have enough role player talent. They're all role players who can't break free from one another. They all rely on the system and they can't do more than what they're supposed to do. They essentially don't have a microwave scorer on this team. The only one who's competent of doing that is JK. But again, everything is still an uncertainty with JK. 5. The biggest problem with the 2 timelines were the young guys. They were raw, they didn't have proper development, they had little experience, thus they couldn't contribute to winning now. But now that they've gotten a taste of 2 playoff rounds last year, despite still being young, they're not freshly young. The young guys have an idea of what it's like to play winning basketball. They have a deeper understanding of how the vets operate and what it takes to really win. That is a great step in potentially developing these guys into rock solid championship players. Steph and the OGs ain't got long. The time is now before it runs out. I think last year's playoff experience was so brutal and so tough that it has prepped the young guys to not only understand their own identity as a basketball player, but also the identity of their own team. So out of the weaknesses and strengths, which is more likely to bother the Warriors? If I'm being honest, I'd pick the weaknesses. The strengths to me are good. Again, they have the power to be able to flip the script on its head. But to me, they only reinforce what the Warriors are already great at. Their weaknesses reflect their root issues, and the inability to correct them is likely going to make them pay. You look around the West, and their weaknesses that consist of age, athleticism, and a lack of perimeter scoring, the top teams got all of that. The Thunder have that, the Rockets have that, the Nuggets have that, the Lakers have that, the Clippers have that. Those are the top teams. And then if you go down the echelon, the Timberwolves have that. The Dallas Mavericks have that. So when you factor in the whole opposition, it becomes incredibly tough to see the Warriors stack on top of them with the issues that they have. The Warriors are relying on jump shooting, intelligence, and, well, Steph Curry. And as bad as they can look relative to the top teams, I don't think anyone can count out Steph even at the age of 37. You were able to give him some competent winning vets, albeit they are old, but the possibility of winning is still very possible despite a rocky foundation. These guys understand what it takes to win at the highest level, and I don't doubt their ability to be able to do that this year together.